What's up everyone, thanks for joining me. The summer wheeling season is almost here. We've got a few things we need to tackle before we'll be ready to hit the trails. So we're going to be tackling a leaky transmission on my T100, and I'm bringing you along for a step-by-step tutorial. So go ahead and smash that subscribe button, make sure you ring the bell for notifications, and with that out of the way, let's get started. You're really not going to need too much for this job. This will be the same whether you're just trying to reseal your transmission or whether you're trying to service it to change the filter. First thing you're going to want to do is head over to the service department of your local dealership for some form-in-place gasket. Here's that part number for you guys. Then once you got that together, head over to your local parts store for some decks too, or compatible, and then something to clean up the gasket or sealing areas. This job is also light on tools. All you need is a tray for your bolts, two 14mm wrenches, a pry bar, something to hold the drive shaft out of the way, a wire brush, a ratchet with an extension and 10mm socket, and a drain pan which isn't pictured here. Don't forget safety glasses and towels. The first thing we're going to do is remove the transmission dipstick. This will make things easier on us down the road. It's located right behind the engine oil dipstick. It's got the orange or brown cap. Just reach in there, remove the clip, and out it comes. Next, we'll crawl under the truck and remove the drive shaft. There are four 14mm bolts that hold the drive shaft to the front differential. This is where our two 14mm wrenches will come in handy. Remove the bolts and place them in the tray. If you have a two-wheel drive truck, this step will not apply to you. To remove the drive shaft from the differential, simply place the pry bar between the two and pry gently. It should come right off. With the drive shaft now disconnected, we will place it out of the way. I used a pry bar as an extra hand and a zip tie to secure it to the sway bar mounting bracket. There's no need to disconnect it from the transfer case at this time. Now we'll place our drain pan under the truck and drain the transmission of its fluid. This also requires a 14mm wrench or socket. Once the fluid has finished draining, replace the drain plug. This will prevent any fluid from falling on you while you're working. Now break out the 10mm socket and ratchet. It's time to loosen those pan bolts. There's 19 of them, so get your forearms ready. Alternatively, if you have power tools, it's okay to use it to loosen them. Just make sure you don't use power tools to tighten them. Once you've loosened all the bolts and gotten them out of the way, it's time to remove the pan. This may take some effort as there's an O-ring that holds the dipstick tube together onto the pan. Just give it a good shake as you pull down firmly and it should come out for you. The transmission will continue to drip fluid, so be sure to have something underneath to catch it. Now it's time to clean up the transmission pan. Take a rag and clean off any oil and debris from the sealing surface and the bottom of the pan. Then we'll use an abrasive pad to clean any gasket material off of the sealing surface. Once you've got most of the old material off of the sealing surface, use a wire brush to finish getting everything out of the cracks. Once you've gotten rid of all the old gasket material, use a clean rag to clean the magnets off as well as you can. Finally, we'll use brake parts cleaner to rinse out the pan. Once you're satisfied that you've rinsed the pan well, use a fresh rag to dry it all out. Now we can move on to preparing the transmission for the new gasket material. Start by wiping any fluid off of the sealing surface. Then use an abrasive pad to clean any old gasket material off of the surface. Use a clean rag to wipe it down. We'll have to come back to this again later, so don't worry about getting it too clean. This is a good time to make sure all the bolts for the transmission pan are clean and ready for installation. Once everything is ready to go back together, it's time to put the form-in-place gasket on the transmission pan. Make sure that you are fully prepared for this step because once the gasket material has left the tube, you only have about 15 minutes to get everything assembled. Put the gasket material on in a straight line, leaving no gaps, and be sure to go back and fill in a little circle around each of the bolt holes. The bead only needs to be about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want too much and you don't want too little. Now to get it all back together, start with a clean rag covered in brake clean to get the sealing surface cleaned of any transmission fluid. Carefully work the pan back into position. As you are raising the pan into place, line the fill tube with the dipstick tube on the pan itself. It will take a bit of effort to overcome the O-ring on the fill tube. This step will be a bit easier if you coat the O-ring with transmission fluid first. Now we are ready to bolt the pan back into place. Start by installing the bolts only hand tight. Once they're all hand tight, we can snug them up with the ratchet. Don't go too tight as they can strip fairly easily. Finally, I torqued the bolts to about 10 foot-pounds. If you don't have a torque wrench, that's okay, you can just go about 1/8 of a turn past light bottom. Now check that the drain plug is tight and we can move on to the drive shaft. This is a very straightforward step. Simply place it back into position and tighten down the 4 bolts. On to the final step. Let's fill the transmission. Start by adding 4 quarts of transmission fluid with the engine off. Use the transmission dipstick tube with a small funnel to fill the transmission. Now we can start the truck and check the fluid level again. At this point we may have to add anywhere from another 1 to 3 quarts. Verify that the fluid level is between the 2 marks labeled cool and you are ready for a test drive. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you managed to learn something this week. Again, make sure you smash that subscribe button, ring the bell, and we'll see you again next week.